Hi you guys, welcome back to the Desk Corner, welcome to a new video. Today's video is kind of a collaboration with Miranda Watson and a bunch of other artists. She had put together this collab where we would see how much of a sketchbook we could fill up with artwork in 10 hours time by splitting it into two 5-hour sessions, and I missed the date for when we were supposed to post that video. So I talked to Miranda, and she did let us know that if we wanted to post at a later date because we want to complete the project or the challenge, then that is fine to do so. And so I have broken some rules here, so I won't say that I stuck to the original challenge very much, but I thought it would be fun to post the video anyway. So as I mentioned before, the challenge is to fill up the sketchbook as much as you can, and so when I was actually doing my art supply collection video, I realized I had this sketchbook and I decided I actually wanted to change what I was originally doing and use this instead, because I'm going to include this sketchbook in a future giveaway most likely, and I thought it would be really fun, since it comes with so many pages, to create some artwork in the beginning and then still give this away so that whoever gets it will still have some of the artwork in there to begin with, and then of course they can fill up the rest of it with whatever they would like to. Anyways, let's go ahead and just get started filling up this sketchbook and starting this challenge. This Tone Tan sketchbook only has the first page, front and back, filled. I wouldn't even say filled, so it's pretty much empty at this point. I love the Derwent drawing pencils, and I decided they would be perfect to use for this challenge because they work so well against that toned tan neutral background. All of these colors are neutrals, my absolute favorite. I wanted to go into this challenge with some type of goal in mind because when I originally started it, I was using a smaller sketchbook and I thought I would just do random sketches. Then I realized I would not be able to have the motivation to get through it unless I actually had a goal in mind. So I made that goal to practice things that I thought I needed to work on or improve my skills on. I decided to start off more simple with a tree sketch, and trees are always something that I've struggled with. The branches, I never get them to look right. I never get the tree to look natural. So that was the first thing I decided to practice. Now, one thing that I realized as I was doing this is that the tree was way too high up, and that was one lesson that I learned here. I wanted there to be more branches at the top, but since I drew the tree a little bit too high up, I couldn't do that. That's okay. I got this very fall vibe, I would say, which is great since we are going into the fall season. Another struggle that I have are backgrounds, so you'll see me trying to do backgrounds a little bit throughout this challenge, and this one didn't turn out very perfect, but I just wanted to practice a little bit. After all, that's what the whole point of the challenge was. Let's quickly talk for a second about broken rules as I finish up this first sketch and move on to the next one, which I think you guys will like the next one. It's one of my favorites. I broke a couple of rules in this challenge, the first one being you're supposed to draw for 10 hours, but I spent some of those 10 hours looking at reference photos and planning, not just drawing, which you were supposed to do separately. Oops. So I also spent way too long at some points just staring and just being way too slow, so I cut those parts out, and after I'd cut everything and just looked at what I was spending drawing, I realized it was less than 10 hours by like 2 hours or something like that. So that was kind of surprising to me. The second rule that I broke was that you're supposed to work on this in 5-hour increments. I could not find time to do that. The longest I did in one day was 4 hours, and the other days I had to split up into 2 other days that I worked on this. So that was a little bit annoying that I could not even follow the rules of this or make the due date of the challenge. But you know what? The purpose of this challenge, I think, was to test yourself as an artist and maybe use it as a vehicle to practice things that you've been meaning to practice and focus more on the simplicity of an artwork rather than spending a whole bunch of time on it, since you're supposed to work on as many as you possibly can. I'm sure I could have created much more artwork than what I did if I had not tried to do backgrounds and complete artworks the way I did and things like that, and shading, but since those were things I wanted to work on anyway, why not incorporate them into the challenge? The purpose of this page here with the horse was to first of all practice backgrounds again, which I'm not sure I succeeded at in this particular artwork, and second of all horse anatomy. And with the second drawing done, let's go ahead and jump right into the third, this cute bunny rabbit. And I got so much practice with freehanding because I was using the Derwent drawing pencils directly on the toned paper, which are not as easily erasable as graphite on white paper is, so that provided even more of a challenge when I would make a mistake, of course. So some of my artworks ended up a little bit messy, but hey, that's what the practice was for in the first place, right? I really like how this rabbit turned out. I think it was so cute. The colors were just so perfect. The color range was so perfect for this type of artwork, and I really wanted everything to have a theme here. You could really see that there's a theme with this small set that I'm using. I think that using a small set can be handy if you're doing a big challenge like this, because if I was using like my 120 polychromos, for example, I might have been even more overwhelmed trying to complete all these artworks. But since I was using this small like 24 set of Derwent drawing pencils, I didn't have to worry about picking colors as another thing, and that would have just taken me even longer to complete this challenge, as I already took forever just doing all the sketching and choosing references and things like that. Although I did have some of them prepped already, but then I ended up changing my mind about things in the moment. You know how you just go with the feeling that you have of what you want to draw that day? That's kind of what happened for a few of these artworks. The challenge that I gave myself in this artwork was fur, another thing that I think I really need to work on. It didn't help that I was rushing through a lot of these artworks, and I really should be taking my time if I want the fur to look realistic, but I think it was at least a little bit of practice to get some of that fur texture in, even though the artwork didn't turn out perfect or highly detailed or highly realistic. But I'm not sure I even have the patience sometimes for extremely hyper-realistic artwork anymore. I used to have more patience for that. I'm just not sure if I still feel like I vibe with that type of artwork, if that makes sense. Anyways, so when I went to do the rabbit's body, it was a little bit blurry in the reference photo, and I tried to get that effect just a little bit, but I didn't want to go ahead and pull out solvent, especially not on thin sketch paper like this, so I ended up just kind of making it look a little rough, and hopefully that worked as a blurry effect and doesn't just make the entire drawing look messy. I also wanted to mention that I know this is a slightly longer video than a lot of the videos I make, but since this was a long challenge for me and it felt like a lot of a challenge, I wanted to kind of portray that feeling in the video itself as well, which is why I didn't speed it up quite as much as I do some of my other videos. So moving on to that fourth artwork. Now this one I did after spending a weekend away at my aunt's ranch, where there are millions, well not millions, but maybe 10 cats and about 11 horses and 3 dogs, a lot of animals, and I got a few nice photos of them. One of the cats is a really beautiful Siamese cat, and his name is Romeo, and he was the inspiration for this drawing. Now I wanted to practice animal anatomy, and I think I did a fairly decent job of doing that in this challenge as well, but I will tell you that this cat sketch took me absolutely forever. The eyes were kind of wrong, the face was a bit cartoonish, especially the way I colored in the eyes. I had to go back and fix it a bit. It still ended up being a bit cartoonish and not necessarily highly realistic, but hey, that is okay. I wanted to sketch the body a little bit more and practice that more than I cared about practicing faces, which I'm usually pretty good at. However, I did capture Romeo's general features and likeness, so that's good. And I had a little bit of trouble in this one coloring in some of the fur because I wanted to just give the impression of color and not actually fill in the cat completely. So the face was not really a great example of that, and then when I went to do the body, I attempted to do it a little bit differently, so it ended up looking a little bit funny. I wanted to focus mainly on shadows and highlights and a couple impressions of color and fur here and there without having to fill everything in, because I think that's something that with artwork I fail to sometimes understand, is that with artwork you don't have to make it look exactly as is, but rather use the real life photo or reference of whatever sort as an inspiration, and it sometimes can look like art. It doesn't have to look just like a photograph. Another thing that I tried to incorporate into this challenge is creating artwork that doesn't necessarily look entirely like it is just a photograph, but rather an artwork. I mean, that is what the point of art is anyways. Rant over. So what do you guys think of this cat sketch? Because this was another one of my favorites, despite how the eyes ended up a little bit weird. I fixed them mostly, but they're still a little bit off. And I just enjoyed the cat sitting position in this and how the colors turned out and everything like that. I also would sadly like to mention that this was the first time I actually broke a Derwent drawing pencil. Oh no, the lead completely fell out after I had sharpened it. And I was so sad. I just stared at that lead for a while because it's such a thick pencil and the course so thick that I just felt like it was wasteful. Now, the Derwent drawing pencils have never broken on me before, but I must have sharpened that one wrong or something. It was one of the cream colors. I think it was actually wheat, but I'd have to go back and check. How very sad for me. So next I decided I wanted to include at least one human portrait. However, as I was sketching it, it was already starting to go terribly wrong. I would have to say this was the most challenging part of the entire sketchbook challenge here. This was just wrong on so many levels. The angle was difficult. I was using a pencil that was hard to erase rather than graphite, so that just made everything a lot harder. And again, the eyes and the face shape just did not turn out well at first. Luckily, I was able to fix everything up in the end, so when you see the end result, you'll see that it actually turned out fairly decent, but it was a nightmare getting there. And this one took up a decent portion of this challenge, a few hours actually. I was kind of annoyed at myself for spending so long on this portrait, which honestly didn't even turn out very good. It was mostly fixing the sketching and all that was taking so long, but I did want to practice sketching faces a little bit. And I figured, why not? I decided to do it towards the end of the challenge so that I wouldn't feel burnt out afterwards, and I just wanted to practice my angles as well. You'll see that I didn't really shade it very much, just a little bit. I didn't complete the portrait or anything like that. The main purpose of it was to practice the shading and get the impressions of where the highlights and the shadows needed to be, as I mentioned doing in another artwork. And especially the hair here, you could see I didn't really put very much effort into that part of it either. In the end though, I think I fixed it up, and even though the eye looks a little bit funny, I think that the face shape turned out better than expected and everything else did as well. So I'm actually pretty proud of myself for this one considering the circumstances. And now let's go ahead and move on to the last artwork of the challenge. I know what you guys are thinking. That was not a lot of artwork. Well, the thing is, a couple of them took me way longer than I expected them to take, and that's okay. I think that as long as I got to practice some of the skills that I wanted to and fill out some of the pages in this sketchbook, because I still want to give it away. Perhaps I'll do a little more artwork in it first and then give it away so that whoever receives it can finish the sketchbook for me. I think that would be so much fun, especially if they shared images of some of the artwork that they create in it after they receive it. Yes, that just sounds like a really exciting idea for a giveaway, you guys. But the point of it really was to fill out the entire page. I'm using a pretty big sketchbook here, not necessarily to fill out the entire sketchbook, which of course I did not come even close to, nor would I in 10 hours. So this artwork here was an attempt for me to practice landscapes a little bit. Something that I really struggle with is landscapes, especially with colored pencil. But the Derwent drawing pencils have a thick enough core that I'm really able to create some of those larger areas as well as work on the more detailed area, so it's really the best of both worlds with this pencil, and something that I would recommend for landscape pencil art. Something like the polychromos would stress me out because they are just so hard, or not, I don't think that's the right way to describe them, but they're firm and there's always a really nice point to them, so they don't always work great for covering large areas as quickly as something like the Derwent drawing pencils do. I didn't have a bright red color in this set, so filling out that barn, I wanted it to be a little bit brighter than what it turned out to be, but I promised only to use that one palette, so you know, I worked with what I had, and I think it still looks pretty good. then you could see what I mean for the mountains. I was able to fill in those larger areas easily and not have any trouble filling in those background areas. Again, I just love how that color palette works together. So I was going to leave the sky just completely tan, and then for some reason I decided, hey, why don't I just use some of those grays and bluish colors that I haven't used much throughout the rest of the challenge. So I decided to pull them out just so that I was using at least every color in the Derwent drawing pencil set for this challenge, and you guys will see that in a moment. Not really sure how I feel about that. Then I filled in the negative space with the darker pencils behind the trees, and honestly, I think that turned out okay. I mean, it could have been better, but I mean, you know, turned out better than I thought it would. So I'm glad that that didn't look totally insane. And I think that this was just something to practice for me. I mean, this is not my usual artwork, not something I would normally pick as a reference photo. So sometimes when you're doing challenges like this, you really get to choose things that you normally wouldn't do or you normally wouldn't gravitate towards, and you just learn, pick up some new skills. As we reach the end here, I'm going to speed this up a bit more so that it doesn't drag too much, as I realize that this has been a journey. I was a bit tired at this point in the process, obviously, after all of that artwork, and I was glad to be on the end side of this challenge and coming out through the end finally. There was originally supposed to be a fence in the foreground here, which would have added a whole lot to this photo or this artwork, but unfortunately I ran out of time. Also, I was just kind of tired and I forgot to do the fence before the grassy meadow, which is what I was supposed to do, and I didn't feel like going over the top. Oh well, I guess not everything can be perfect here, and at least I got to practice my landscape, and then you could see me start on the sky here, but unfortunately you won't see me finish it on camera. My camera battery either died or I ran out of space and I didn't really realize, so I kept drawing. But that's okay, because we're going to go ahead and do a flip through at the end so you could see all the artworks in their finished entirety anyways. Wow, alright you guys, that was quite a challenge, and that was me not even really following all the rules as I should have been. So here are my Derwent drawing pencils after this fiasco. This is the one, actually yellow ochre, that suffered an extreme tragedy. As you could see, the pencil core broke. That's why the pencil is so much shorter now, because I had to sharpen it, and it's such a tragedy. Let's just have a moment of silence for my yellow ochre. Okay, let's go ahead and put the Derwent drawing pencils away finally. I loved working with my Derwent drawing pencils, but boy am I tired now. And I want to do a flip through of all of the artwork that I created during this challenge. So let's go ahead and take a look in my toned tan sketchbook now. So of course we have the original artwork that was here before the challenge. So this was from the 10th of January 2018, 4 entire years ago, actually longer, 4.5. And this other artwork that was there as well, which was the 25th of January 2018. And then we move on to the challenge. I numbered each page that was part of the challenge just so that I remember doing this challenge and that these artworks were all part of a series together. So let's look at the completed artwork. Our first one is a very sketchy look. It is our autumn tree with a little bit of a background that was kind of just, you know, not a lot of effort put into it. Next we have got some animals. So we've got my horse and the sunset on the ocean background here. I think this one turned out pretty well, even if the background was not the best. Then next we've got my bunny rabbit. I think that one is my favorite still, you guys. I think it is. I love how the bunny rabbit turned out. That one is artwork number 3. Next we have our Siamese cat Romeo for artwork number 4, or at least a loose inspiration inspired by Romeo the cat. And I got to use a little bit of my blue in here because, as you guys could see, these artworks are really, really warm, especially because I wanted to incorporate the toned tan background into the artworks. So I'm not using a lot of the blues, but I did use a little bit there. I wanted to make sure I used all the colors since I'm only using the 24 set. And Next we have a portrait. This one is very sketchy and loose, but I just wanted to practice my anatomy a little bit, and I think it turned out all right. Not my best work, but it turned out all right. And then finally, so that's artwork number 5. I made it through 6 artworks in this challenge, which is kind of sad. So artwork number 6 is this farm landscape where the fence was supposed to be here. And I actually worked on it a little bit longer after my camera battery or storage space ran out or whatever happened. And so that's why this one looks a little bit different than what you saw. I think that I would like to do the giveaway at some point, maybe when I reach 10K subscribers or something like that, but I do have a lot of the sketchbook left over. It is like a 50-sheet sketchbook, so if there's any other challenges or things you'd like me to complete in this, let me know. I can do something else for this on my channel. Okay, wow, I am just a little bit tired out from that. Thank you, Miranda. I wanted to thank Miranda for organizing this entire challenge and the idea, and I know that I didn't make the due date or anything like that, but check out the description box down below for videos from the other participants of this challenge. I'm just going to try and link the playlist or do something like that, and I hope that you guys will go and watch those as well if you haven't. This one, of course, is just not quite as hardcore as those ones, I bet, and I still have a bunch of those to watch as well, so I'm excited for that too. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!